when you order a part, you want it to show up, the right part, which is in and of itself a huge data challenge.
Doesn't matter how good it is or how cheap it is, if it doesn't fit, the part is irrelevant. Automotive is changing, and it's really a computer with some mechanic part attached to it.
An ICE vehicle still got about 20,000 parts on it, and EVs still have about 12,000 parts, unique parts. Instead of printing out the PDF, they put the PDF online. They were like, we're online.
Yeah.
They didn't really do what you wanted. It made everyone had access to the catalog now, but it's still not easy to search.
Automate what you're doing so that we can spend your time on improving the data rather than just chasing the gremlins out of it. So.
Hey, I'm Matt Fowler from Pivotree. I'm the account executive overseeing the automotive industry. I've been in the space for 13 years now.
I'm Nils Pedersen, head of product strategy with Stibo Systems. I think I can be proud to say that I've been in the automotive industry for over 25 years. So
I'm catching up.
Yeah,
I'm catching up.
I always felt like everybody was 25 years plus, or there was always somebody that came and said, hey, I'm third generation. That sort of trumps everyone. But that's sort of what we love about the industry. I've seen you around for many meetings and auto care associations and so forth. Happy to sit here and walk through this today. So automotive, what do you feel like automotive? What's special to you about automotive? Why are you attached to it and I guess keep coming back?
Yeah, automotive is interesting. It was something that I kind of fell into. I'm originally from Michigan. Wow. So in my first company that I worked in that was in the automotive aftermarket, basically was like, you're from Michigan, you know cars, you're now in the automotive space. And then I started going to all the events, and it's such an interesting industry because it is so unique in the way that it functions. And then it's the only industry that I've worked in, and I've worked in quite a few, where genuinely speaking, every company is always looking to advance the whole industry, not only just themselves. I've never really seen another industry pull that off, right, as well as I've seen it happen in the aftermarket. And that's kind of how I keep coming back.
Yeah, whenever there's an event, it's like everybody's into it. I came from the data side and so I'm not from Michigan, but the data and the complexity of the data, there's unique data challenges and so forth. It's like, that was interesting. Be part of solving some of those. So, and then I think some of the complexity around the supply chain or distribution as well was like, we work with distribution. It's always, hey, you order by 5, you have it next morning, and that's not how automotive works. So,
it's always an interesting model because it's a 3-tier distribution model, right? Like it's manufacturer, distributor, retailer, and that allows them to do things very quickly. Because the movement of parts, it's not like I have a dance or something coming up on Friday. I should probably order an outfit on Monday. It's like the car's in the dock. It's on, it's on a lift, and they want it out by the end of the day. So when you order a part, you want it to show up, the right part, which is in and of itself a huge data challenge in getting all of the fitment data, getting all of the, correct part to fix the problem, identifying it, and then getting the right one sent to you is always another piece. So kind of going through all of that, and you have to do it as instant as you can, because every second that the car's up, you're losing money, and the person getting their car fixed is less and less happy.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it. We as consumers, we drop our car in the morning, and regardless of what's wrong with it, we'd love to get it back. Sometimes late afternoon, not knowing the whole, saying, okay, we got to diagnose it, we got to figure out what part is needed, we got to order part, we got to get those parts delivered and installed, tested, and out of the door. Right? So I feel like that's the magnificent aspect of automotive, that you deal with all of those. So same day delivery, like 2-hour delivery.
Yeah.
Versus, the Amazons of the world. It's like, they do same day delivery sometimes, but not multiple times a day.
And the stakes are just lower, so they can do it a little bit later. And if things go, that's what forces, a lot of, whether it's do it yourself or do it for me, whoever's ordering the part, right? They want to get it fixed fast. And if that's one of the, tying back to the data side of it, one of the pieces is making sure that they get the right part, and they think the same thing, and they've been doing it for so long, they'll order 3-4 of the same thing that are just slightly different to make sure they don't have to wait for the delivery again.
Oh, so that's unique because that ties into, we'll talk a little bit about returns and so forth, but when you buy things is, first of all, it has to fit. Like it doesn't matter how good it is or how cheap it is. If it doesn't fit, the part is irrelevant. So it's got to fit. And the next thing is it has to be in stock and delivered. So it doesn't matter how well it fits and how good it is or quality if it can't be delivered, so you can do the repair. And then third, price and quality and so forth is distant third. It's not like we as consumers, when we look at the repair bill, that there are actually specific brand names of the parts on there. It's always something obfuscated, like, unless you actually go out and sometimes those parts are hidden inside of assemblies and so forth. So you don't stand a chance of even knowing what is the brand and quality of the part that was put onto the part.
Yeah, and I think that, in that aspect, it's interesting too, because then all of a sudden brand recognition, while it's good for the consumer when they're thinking like accessories and things of that nature, when it's just general replacement parts, a lot of consumers, not all, there are definitely people who will look it all up, but a lot of them, it's really the person you're trying to love your brand is the installer, not necessarily the consumer. Right. So advertising to that can be an interesting challenge as well, just to get them to recognize, use our part every time because it's not going to break, or it's not going to do this, or it's going to be cheaper or whatnot.
Right. So you said accessories, and then we were in the maintenance and repair world of things, and one of the things I've learned throughout the years in automotive is that different aspects is completely different worlds. So we will sometimes exposed to it. We have like collisions, like, oh, you think you're going to take your car to a dealership and so forth? It's like, oh no, like collision is completely different. Obviously, it's all about the car, accessories, I guess performance part.
Accessories, performance, paint,
paint,
tires. They're all handled slightly differently.
Yeah,
as it all goes through, for sure.
And we buy them differently too. So like the accessories and whatever you need in order to figure out like what is the particular roof rack that will work on my car, or now a lot of parts have like paint color. So one of my experiences right now is like, I need a new cover for right mirror. And like, okay, well, that particular year, make, model, am I able to get the cover in that specific color for that specific car and trim level? So that's sort of, I love those data challenges. Like, how do I actually find that? Who does that? Who does that well?
Yeah, that's definitely, it's always interesting to me. I tend to be someone who kind of goes online sometimes and just builds cars on the things. And it's like, you change one thing and all of a sudden it's like, well, you have to change these 4 others too. And then you think about after the fact. Once you've done it, now all these parts are also tied to all of those different changes, and it's got to be documented somewhere.
Right.
And making sure that it's given to the repair people.
Yeah. And you said something about you would buy like multiples just because you don't quite know. So what do you do when you're uncertain? You make sure you cover. So what does that scenario look like if you're the repair person that's diagnosing and say, okay, I need this replacement part? So you take us through what that looks like.
So kind of from the way that I see it is basically, you diagnose, you figure out what you're going to need. You may order 2 or 3, 4 of something, based on the fitment. You mentioned trim level is another interesting piece that kind of plays into it, because sometimes it's just you're speeding through it and you're just like, well, both of these could work. Yeah. I don't know which one's going to work the best. I'll just get them all. And then you return the ones that you don't use, which leads to kind of a relatively high return rate. Conservative numbers put it at somewhere like 16% of online automotive parts. Less conservative numbers will put it up at 20, 25% even, just because of that mentality of buying multiples in order to make sure that you get what you need and you don't have to take the car off and wait another day to get another part. It's
I remember those stories as well, that you order from multiple places and whoever gets there first, that's the one you install and then return. So that's another thing that drives return. But this whole thing was like, well, I don't know if it's this part, this part, or this part, because you trust the data, you trust all of this, and then and then you take them out of box. It's not like you return the item in box, right? So there's some.
Well, if you get it halfway on, you've gotten it dirty, you've gotten all this stuff done with it, and now you have to, it just gets sent back, and then it's got to get re-cleaned up if it's even reusable still. Because some parts, the minute they're open, they're no longer viable. Yeah. So it's an interesting concept. The stakes are so much higher in automotive parts, which is another reason that I think it's a fun space, because the transportation costs. Many of these parts aren't light.
Right.
It's not like ordering a piece of clothing or shoes or something. These are heavy pieces that have to be moved from place to place.
Right.
On top of the fact that, when you go to return them, not all of them can get returned necessarily.
Right.
Or resold, I should say.
Yeah. So one thing about automotive, it's like automotive is changing, and I often hear people talking about it's like, well, it's really a computer with some mechanic part attached to it, and then you get into like electric vehicles and hybrids and other things where these are driven by computers. How is that impacting the automotive aftermarket? And
Yeah,
see it
in a couple of different places. I mean, definitely the computers are driving everything. The nice thing is the average car still has, an ICE vehicle still got about 20,000 parts on it, and EVs still have about 12,000 parts, unique parts for anybody getting really specific. That's about the number.
But that's when you take it down to every washer and screw.
Right. We're not going to go down all that low,
Yeah.
but it's a matter of kind of understanding that there's still a ton of parts with those computers, and then making sure that everyone has access. A lot of times the computer can kind of tell you what's wrong to a degree.
Yeah.
And so making sure that everybody has access to that. And, I know that's something that the associations fight for a lot.
Okay.
Is making sure that they can do that. But
have access to the data and the repair data, because if you don't have access to, I guess, the diagnostics and what the computers are telling you, it's like, how are you going to stand a chance of, like, is it actually something wrong, or is it the sensor? So I feel like I have repaired and replaced more sensors than anything else. So
tell me what's wrong. Well, the thing that's supposed to tell you what's wrong is the thing that's broken.
yeah,
That happens a lot. But yeah, just getting access to that data is, I know, something that is constantly being fought for, because the computers, you can lock people out of them, and people don't always know who owns that data. At least who has access to that data, I should say, without being too specific.
right. So outside of just the cars changing, then you got other players coming into it. Amazon, for example, and their supply chains. Like, who's benefiting from Amazon? Because obviously it's the same parts and manufacturers, and they're selling it different ways. So what's the buying experience like from?
Yeah, the nice thing about Amazon, if we're looking at the good and the bad, right? The nice thing about Amazon is that it's a consistent experience across the board. So a lot of it's I would imagine it's got more draw towards the DIY user, because they're sending it to their house. They can wait the 2 days. They can do these pieces. Automotive's even faster. Like, that's what I think that a lot of people overlook sometimes, is that automotive parts actually work at this, like, faster than Amazon in a lot of cases of getting parts to the right place, because of the 3-tiered model, right? There's usually distribution somewhere near, and there has to be, in order to get the parts there as quick as they can. But Amazon's definitely pushing people to make it a more consumer-centric experience online. E-commerce makes up, some numbers put it at half of part sales in one way or another. Because even your dealers, or not dealers, your repair shops are logging on and ordering it from somewhere, whether that be Amazon or any of the other large retailers in the space.
Right.
It's becoming more and more important. People aren't using paper catalog. It's hard to think that was something that someone would even think about, but it's not that far back that was being used. And that having a seamless e-commerce experience is something that I think that Amazon pushed everybody towards and forced the industry to move that direction, which I'm appreciative personally, because I'm an e-commerce guy. But
But it also depends on the category, right? So yes, Amazon certainly we provide the various air filters and cabin air filters and windshield wipers. But when you get into like some of the parts, and it also depends on how much you do yourself. Like, are you daring to pull out a YouTube video and start messing and pulling doors apart and so forth? Like, talking from experience.
Yeah. Back in the day.
It's fun, yeah.
These days with the computers, it's even harder to even do that. But definitely though, if you think of windshield wipers, you think of even solvent and stuff, that the fluids that you're putting in your car, all of that can be pretty easily bought in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
It's the more complex parts that bring in the more complex challenges of accessibility to those parts in the location that you want them.
Right, and then the various sensors and so forth, and that too. It's like, you can't just replace a bumper, you can't just replace a mirror anymore. You can't even replace the windshield because of the various parts that are attached to it, and sensors and whatnot, in the not just the complexity, but also price. When you're talking about a single headlight assembly costing $1 in $5,000 for just one assembly, that's another thing that's
complex.
changing as well, for sure. So.
And yeah, the windshield's interesting because I actually recently cracked mine, as we all do, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I just remember the old ads
Yeah.
where they're like, we'll come out to you. I'm like, that's great. And I call them, they're like, no, we can't. There's too many sensors. We need to be in a white room with all of the different things set up to recalibrate. Because once you change that, there's a ton of different sensors on newer vehicles that have to be recalibrated. You don't even think about it because you're like, it's a windshield, it's a piece of glass.
Right.
But everything's interconnected in a lot stronger way than I think you would anticipate.
Yeah, so the $200 windshield wiper replacement in the parking lot at work is not happening anymore, right?
Not as much. It's the older cars, they still can, but it seems to me anyway, the newer ones it's a much harder struggle to get the sensors and things recalibrated.
Right. So another reason to whatever the right to repair and so forth. So outside of regular automotive, maybe we can switch to the other types of automotive. There's on the heavy duty side.
Yeah.
Do you have what have you seen especially unique on the heavy duty side?
Yeah, heavy duty's particularly unique in the aspect of they make up a smaller percentage of the number of vehicles on the road, but the parts are just by nature bigger.
Yeah.
And so moving them around is a bigger challenge. They don't really have necessarily a ton more parts than a car. They're just bigger. They have a few more, but not a huge number. And so because of that, the transportation costs of getting things right, the data is even more important in a space that is admittedly lagging a bit to get the data in front of people.
Right.
I mean, I know it's something that because a lot of heavy duty vehicles are built to spec, they can look exactly the same on the outside and they're actually quite different on the inside. And that's unique in that space because a lot of cars, you log on, you've got 3 different trim levels to choose from, and you kind of move on.
Yeah.
And heavy duty, there's a lot more customization that can and does go into it. So it's harder to just, plug in the information and say, well, this belongs here because of this.
Yeah.
You have to really draw it back and figure out the exact pieces that are in there. So it's an even more complex data model, even though it's technically a smaller subset of the vehicles, but they're also driven a lot more. I mean, heavy duty vehicles are on the road, they're moving things constantly. So the need for, the more it gets used, the more it breaks. That's the nature of parts.
Yeah.
And so they break more often because of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the data is even harder to get to in some cases.
And it's also the aspect of light duty and regular cars. Like, if it's broken down, you will find other ways to get to where you need to go to. Whereas if you have a heavy duty truck that is breaking down somewhere, it's like, ooh, that's transporting something. And how do you recover from that? It's refrigerated and so forth. There's all kinds of complexity in the impact of a heavy duty vehicle being stranded somewhere, something not working. The commercial impact of that is very, very different than, inconvenience. You don't have to take an Uber. It sounds like you take Ubers most places anyway.
Yeah, living in Chicago makes that easy.
Yeah. But there's that aspect of it. So the reliability and also predictability of what repairs and so forth. It's not like these things are not falling out of the air if you miss maintenance, but equivalently you can be stranded out where there's no access to repair or parts.
Yeah, because a lot of these big vehicles, when you're transporting, they're not usually transporting in the city all of the time, right? So they are out there in the middle of nowhere sometimes, and they've got to get access. And if we go all the way back to the implications of getting the wrong piece of clothing or shoes or something, it's lower than missing the right part for a light duty vehicle, but that's even lower than missing the right part for a heavy duty vehicle because now you're dealing with that thing could potentially have all of the clothing that was ordered in the beginning of the train. And so it's kind of an interesting concept to think about how it's all very circular in the way that all moves.
Right. And then from a manufacturing, distribution, and retail, we're all heavily dependent on data and it's the digitization of it. You said, well, nobody's flipping through printed catalogs anymore. maybe they're printed through electronic catalogs, PDF files, and so forth. There's probably quite a few of those that are still being produced and used. And the convenience in the retail store, if you're buying windshield wipers, there's still a like paper catalog hanging there telling you what sizes fit your car. So, but digitization, that's like how far we come, or how much is there still to go?
I mean, I remember when I first started in the industry, that was a big push. It was just everyone has to get online, right? So everyone just turned their, instead of printing out the PDF, they put the PDF online. They were like, we're online.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, they didn't really do what you wanted. It made everyone had access to the catalog now, but it's still not easy to search. And that's where I think the biggest push has been lately, we'll say, in the last few years, is really trying to make sure that people can log onto a website or a portal and search for the pieces that they need and land there quickly. Right. And so that's where having all of the data in an organized fashion, which I think is the piece that tends to get overlooked, because if you're thinking about a paper catalog, it's printed and it's kind of like, well, here's the piece, here's the Carfits, here's this. But if you're trying to just search, you don't want to have to go to page 47 to find your car, and then go to page 48 to find your actual model, and then go to your trim level. You want to be able to just type in those things and it just populate. And that's the piece where the data moving to a digital space and these digital catalogs and things of that nature, they're not as simple as the old catalogs were. They require a lot more, taxonomy. I know that's something that everybody's paying a lot of attention to, and being able to search and find the right pieces. Because the standard, there's standards, especially in the aftermarket, working with fitment data and aces and pies and all of those kinds of things. So there's the base minimum, but then everybody always wants more. There's never been an instance where having more data was a bad thing, if it's organized. And that's the key, is it has to be organized. Otherwise, it's just a big pool of data that it's like, well, go find that. Well, I found the word. I don't know what it's tied to, but I found it.
Yeah. And then the consistency, so there's a lot of data that if you look at across manufacturers that may be in the same category, it's like, this is technically right. They use the engine, it's technically right. They use model, and technically right, they use something else. But when you're looking at the consistency across, when you're buying and looking up parts, there's something to be applied then, because, and then you look at what do we know as consumers? Like, do I know if I have the 2.2 liter versus the 2.4 liter engine? I know it's 4 cylinders, and does it even matter? I feel like there's something tricky there about like the actual fitment data that an engineer or somebody with deep knowledge about the vehicles is putting in, versus when from the outside, like what is it, and I felt that's always been part of the conversation. How are people buying it, and what do they know about their vehicle to get to the right part, versus the attribution and the application and the fitment data that is tied down to the actual like physical configuration of the data. So I don't know if you have seen like similar experiences or around that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, kind of like you said, there's the base minimum that people can put in, and that is that kind of heavily engineering mind of the people who know what they're talking about, putting it in, and then a bunch of people look at it who also know what they're talking about, and they're like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And unfortunately, the person who's buying it, like if I'm buying something for my car, for instance, I'm not going to know much more than the base level of what my car can do at any given time. And so kind of being able to draw everything back to those really simplistic terms is something that I think it needs to be more focused on, if it's not already being focused on in the e-commerce space, especially for the DIY people. Do it for me. They're closer, right? Yeah. They do deal with these things every day. They're used to it. So you can be a little lax, but as you continue to put it more and more in front of the consumer, the end consumer, I should say, the simpler it has to be, simply because they don't deal with it every day. It's not, they're not constantly studying engines and studying, how does this impact this?
Right.
So I think that it's really important to make sure that it's easily accessible to the average person, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So another thing about, or not necessarily one thing about automotive, but at the end of the day, it is progress. So there's something unique about how you buy it and how you do it. But at the end of the day, it's just product with all the complexities that you have in other industries as well. So it's like, is automotive manufacturing, well, you're a manufacturer, so you're still dealing with parts and all the specification and the warehousing and whatnot about that. And same in distribution and retail. So just because there's automotive specific requirements that are really important, let's not forget that 80% of the work is actually dealing with the core product data, the digital assets and so forth. And that's really not unique to automotive. So there's things that are unique to automotive, and then there's a lot of things that it has in common with their siblings in manufacturing and distribution and retail. And sometimes I feel like that's missed and it's overshadowed by some of the aftermarket data standards versus like, hey, I just also have to take care of the core of our business. So.
Yeah, I mean, the standards definitely help get things started. I think that's kind of the way that I've always looked at it. It's a great baseline of the information, and then you got to continue to grow on top of it and make sure that you've got, you're still selling. It's still an e-commerce play to a degree. I mean, there's if we say it's just under 500 billion in 2005 in the aftermarket, half of that's e-commerce. It's still online. Like, this is all, you need descriptions. You need all of this content you're still selling something. Yeah. It's not like they have to buy it from you. And that's where sometimes I feel like the data gets overlooked of like, well, it's a broken piece. They don't have to. There are like 4 different people that make that particular piece. So now you're competing on, just copy and explaining why do you deserve to, be the manufacturer for them. So they've got that is the exact same problem that you have in all of the rest of e-commerce. Right. So while we are unique in the aspect of we need things faster, we do have a lot more data that's necessary from the base level of fitment and attributes and all of those fun parts. But there's still the general e-commerce data that we look at last, that most industries look at first. And that's where something that I think we've got to put a little bit more thought into.
True. Yeah, so as much as we say faster, my recent experience with a repair was almost 2 weeks to schedule an appointment, and then 3 to 5 days to diagnose, and then a couple more days to repair. And we're talking about a sensor. So not everyone does it exceptionally well.
Somebody out there is cringing right now hearing that, myself included.
Yeah, it can certainly happen.
Yeah,
and that was the case. And I think, well, maybe this particular place, it was like, oh, can you take it somewhere else? But when you're dealing with a warranty scenario, you're sort of captive audience. You sort of have to go there. So it's like you don't always have choices. As much as we think that you're just going to go to the next place, you can't always. So.
Yeah. Well, and even in this instance, I have to imagine that when you go to get something else fixed, you're going to look at other places that'll have that will at least accept your warranty, even if you're driving a little further. It's like, well, yeah, but it'll get fixed, so that's cool.
Yeah. Very good. So if you think about it, it's like we talk about automotive, it's like call to action. Like what is it that I think most was like, oh, yeah, we wish we had better quality data. We wish we had, it's like, what are the actions to get there?
Yeah. I think that's the first question that everybody seems to want more, right? Yeah. I want more data. I want more this. And I think that it's important for people to take a step back and say, is the data I have organized? Yeah. And then start building on it, because a lot of times you already have some of this data you didn't know you had because it was just in the wrong spot, or it was named something slightly differently. I mean, I know working with a lot of my colleagues, taxonomy is a big piece of the puzzle of, just what is something named is slightly different can ruin the whole thing. And so making sure that everything's organized and then putting it into a management system that can help you figure out where the existing gaps are, and then working with someone to fill those gaps. Obviously, that's the more part. And then being able to organize it in a way that the retailers, because a lot of times in automotive, the manufacturers aren't really selling it direct in a lot of, like, that's not where the most of their money comes from. Right. It's coming from the retail channels. And so putting it in a place where they can get to it in the way that they want to receive it, because they all want them slightly differently. Everyone wants to be unique, which is fine. Yeah. But having a system that can manage that data is important as well.
Yeah, and I think my final point is like, whatever you can automate, if you're spending all of your time every month and getting back to status quo, maybe look at things and systems that will help you automate what you're doing so you can spend your time on improving the data rather than just chasing the gremlins out of it. So I guess with that, thank you for the conversation today, and I guess good luck with everything.
Thanks a lot. It's great to talk to you.